Hey, hello, how are you? This is a show for everyone else. Instead of going after top 1% of the world,
put yourself in the best
we
position
dedicate
to
this
succeed.
podcast to celebrate the
Work on
lives
videos
of
or
the
films
unsung
and tell
heroes
stories that
and
resonate with
self-made
you.
artists.
You want to be able to do it truthfully and have great access, and that allows you to infuse yourself and to be able to communicate your own self in a way that is truthful and honest and sympathetic to the story you're telling. Fame and fortune is not in the journey right now. For me, it's never been about that. It's been about to be able to make a career out of it and to be able to travel to places and make relationships with people, meet people, make friends. With this technology, we can do that. Before you had to buy whole encyclopedias and try to get updates for things. Now you can use this technology to communicate ideas directly to people in a really quick way. It's a privilege to do this work, and also, we can change society and make it better, change minds and build understanding and have more compassion, with this information.
Tell us a little bit about some of the projects you're working on. I feel very much in the same boat, to be honest. It's just overwhelmed, super excited, and feeling privileged, really. But what are some of the things you're working on?
I'm working on a couple of projects right now. Aside from my own projects, my own personal projects, I like to collaborate with other filmmakers. And also I do a lot of nonprofit videos to stay afloat and keep the rent paid. So it's a big juggling act, but it's a fun juggling act because, it's a privilege to do the work, like you said, and to make a career out of it. I wouldn't have it any other way, just to be able to give myself into all this work, creating all this different energy and collaborating with different people. So a project that's been in flux since a couple of years now is a documentary about the rise of baseball in China. A couple of guys from Baltimore approached me, a professor from George Washington University, this guy Professor Mark Hyman, and also a reporter from the Baltimore Sun, this guy Jeff Barker. They reached out to me to help them make a film about baseball in China. They've been following this kid who's like the first player drafted from the Major League Baseball development centers in China. And they've been following him for 2 years in the minor leagues, and we wanted to make a film about his journey. But we realized it's also a journey. It's about Major League Baseball's journey into mainland China. Through investment in education, they're trying to build the culture of baseball and get into the market in China. So they're sort of looking for the Yao Ming effect. If they can get a Major League Baseball in America. This film I'm working on is all about that, these two kind of journeys, China's journey into America, but also MLB's journey into China, so sort of a cross-cultural film. And, while we're trying to raise money and, we've already done some shoots, gone over there, put together a trailer, like a production kit, like a press kit also to raise money, fundraising kit. So, at the same time, I'm also helping my friend Brian Harrison Nelson. He's a Mardi Gras Indian and originally from New Orleans. He's been working on a film about his mom and his family's legacy, which they're Mardi Gras Indians, Black Indians, and sort of a historical documentary. It's sort of about runaways. It's about runaway slaves who adopted the indigenous culture of Native Americans based in the New Orleans area. So they're sort of like the forefathers of the whole jazz scene. And so, it's kind of exciting to find myself in that space and help create a film, using my own skills. I like to shoot and edit. So, but I also like to collaborate with people, trying to help them tell their stories. And, that way I get to, see a little of everything and travel to these really interesting places. So, and then aside from those kind of projects, I'm doing nonprofit videos for a hospice care center in Boston, the first one in Massachusetts. And they were part of this movement. They were celebrating 40 years helping people. And it's been a learning experience, just spending time with these caregivers, caretakers, people who take care of others who are not able to take care of themselves and have maybe like a fatal disease that they incurable disease. So it's been an amazing experience to bring cameras into those kind of spaces also.
So what's interesting with you, Ken, is when I look at your profile, your director message on your website, which I think is my favorite part of your site and also my favorite parts of any of these independent filmmakers, documentary sites, is I really want to hear what you have to say and why you're doing what you do. And very quickly, I realize for pretty much everybody we've interviewed on Feisworld is a self-made artist and an unsung hero in a way, which you very much are yourself. And on top of that, a lot of these films you just mentioned, from hospice care, to the genocide, American Indians, like all these people are also in a way very unsung heroes themselves. So I feel like I'm interviewing unsung hero who's filming and interviewing other people about pretty much a very similar journey. Give us because a lot of my listeners may or may not have necessarily lived through a independent film production process. So at a high level, I guess, if you're to explain to a young nephew or niece about what you do, maybe what you help these people do, what does that sound like?
Yeah, I mean, I would say try to figure out what your vision should be or what you want it to be. Put yourself in the best position to succeed, and work on videos or films and tell stories that that resonate with you. You want to be able to do it truthfully and have great access and be able to do it in an honest way that allows you to infuse yourself and to be able to communicate your own self in a way that is truthful and honest and sympathetic to the story you're telling. To be an artist, it's relative and it's for everyone to figure out for themselves. Early on in life, I realized I wanted to use art and the camera and to be able to help tell untold stories, to help use media to build understanding for those that are, usually misunderstood, to identify needs in our community or society that I could be helpful with my camera. So for me, it's these underserved communities, immigrant populations, these people who never have the spotlight on them. I don't know. Not everyone can be the darling of Hollywood or Sundance and get all the big grants. So, for me, it's always been a way to like, hey, how can I make sure I can keep doing the work, but also be helpful in the people that I associate with or run into in my daily life,
I can unpack that. I can probably just have that chat with you for the next week, literally, unstop. What you just said, which is I feel like, is it a dichotomy? There is not so much of I don't want to call it a conflict necessarily, but what you said about helping speak the truth, tell the untold stories, people who you basically, many people that you have interviewed, you have put on your film are not necessarily household names. They're not in Hollywood. So it's something, to be quite honest, that I also struggle with my own podcast, that people say, if you look across the whole big spectrum of podcasters, famous or not so famous, everybody trying to get the same faces on their shows, on their website. And people are going after that, and they're getting the downloads they need, the fame that they want, and the credibility. But we're both doing something along that line. And then on the other hand, we have to keep doing something else and trying to figure out a way to keep doing what we do, to keep our own business afloat. How do you navigate that?
If it's like fame and fortune is not in the journey right now, for me, it's never been about that. It's been about to be able to make a career out of it and to be able to travel to places and make relationships with people, meet people, make friends. So since I'm not, winning Oscars here and there, and going to all the big film festivals, what can I make out of it? I know I'm capable of making a good film that will connect with people. So I have to do the best I can. I have to, see how I can keep doing the work, but also stay afloat. how do I be creative about keeping my skills sharp by like being active and continuing doing the work? And so it's a lot about, getting freelance gigs. It's a lot about, doing a lot of work for community organizations that doesn't pay much, but I'm able to continue, So, I mean, it's for every individual artist to identify, to figure out for themselves, hey, like, am I getting all the grants? Am I, getting the big budgets to go shoot that? So if so, that's cool and all. So you got to go and make the most of it. But if you're the artist that's still kind of underground, but you have good content and good projects going on, you have to just keep focusing on the work, but also figure out ways to pay the rent and put food on the table. So it's a juggling act, but it's a very fulfilling one.
Very, very much so. I'm living through that myself. I guess I was much more conservative with my career, even though I'm sure many other people see my earlier career as a consultant, even though working full time, to be not as conservative as, or not as guaranteed as working, I don't know, Citigroup or State Street or something. But still, to me, I knew that I wasn't going to be doing that, working for someone else for too much longer. So I became a freelancer 2 years ago, and absolutely no regret. But I feel thankful for all the experiences I had before that enable me to do what I do today. But what I find interesting, which is the next segment I guess I want to explore with you, is that originally I noticed there are a lot of career changers who listen to Feisworld podcast. I once assumed that they were much younger, fresh out of school, looking for advice, but I noticed more and more so that people are in their 30s, 40s, and actually well into their 50s who are changing careers. And some people want to shoot a documentary film or doing something in the creative field well into their 50s. So only you know this because you've been doing this for a long time. The vision that you had, perhaps an ideal career that you thought would look like, back then versus how you look at your career today. How has that changed? And then another one is, what are some of the missteps or some of the things that you wish you knew going into this, that you wish someone could tell you, but perhaps are only the things you learn along the way?
Well, I mean, getting back to that original part of, or the getting to talk about career changing, right? I mean, I think it's a result of people realizing or trying to identify what makes them happy, right? So, I mean, when I was working in New York as freelance editor for a lot of reality shows and this and that, I was making $500 a day, and getting paid and like making tons of money is awesome and fun. I was able to send money back to my parents, take care of them. But then, when the economic downfall hit, I didn't work for 9 months. So then I sort of didn't have a choice to continue doing that. I was like, well, now's my chance to work on my own film and actually finish my film that I started in 2008, 2007. So, it was sort of a sink or swim thing, or just make the most of your time kind of thing. So as soon as I let go of that structure, that idea that I had to have a 9-to-5 job and to, keep making money every day and this and that, it was a whole different way of living life. And, I instantly felt a lot happier and more fulfilled. And so if people are going to do all that, just take that opportunity to, take the time to find out what makes them happy and just go for it. Stop wasting time because it's going to take a lot of years off one's life if, you do something that you don't love. Right. So, and when I went on my journey, I realized, wait, now I have to relearn how to be a filmmaker because I've been so busy being a freelancer and trying to stay afloat and, keep the rent paid. Isn't that what everyone does? So then the journey of being an independent filmmaker finally hit me like, oh, wait, you're supposed to do all this stuff. You have to, find your voice, have, put together a team, keep the pipeline going, starting projects, finishing them, going to film festivals, leverage them, try to get your project on TV, try to get distribution deals. I didn't even know I was supposed to do that when I first made my baseball film, my first film, which was on TV. So, but then working on My Life in China, I have no idea what happened in my mid-30s, but I feel like I was in a fog and I had no idea. I was a little confused. What am I supposed to do? Am I trying to be a freelancer or trying to be an independent filmmaker? So I wish I had realized earlier that I should just choose one journey and go for it. And in doing so, after being wishy-washy about it, I realized I had let a lot of stuff and opportunities slip through my fingertips. Like, I had a good film when I started my journey, but I didn't follow through with it. I didn't keep applying to grants, and I didn't stay in the sphere of all the gatekeepers, all the grant givers, all the people that keep earmarking your career, that making you keep going. So
yeah, sir. I think what you're also saying, which is what I learned through my brief conversation with you last week, was to realize that, wow, something, if you were to produce a film 5 years ago, the process in a way has changed drastically. How much more difficult it is to now find a distributor, and then find a spot for yourself, compete for that spot on Hulu, on Netflix. I spoke with a number of people, and the rules of the games changed drastically. So I think that, would you agree that may have really made your part of your career kind of challenging too, of the changing rules?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be that people would try to get their TV broadcast. You could make a bunch of your money back, if you could secure like a contract with PBS or like HBO. But the landscape has changed. You can distribute your film directly to people. There's all these streaming services. There's educational. There's even airlines and cruise ship licensing. There's tour, bus licensing, hotels licensing. So it just depends on how much filmmakers want to break down their rights and do all the legwork. How much do they want to retain? How much of a percentage? So, the big films tend to go with like sort of an umbrella kind of approach, where one company will try to do everything, but then they usually will hit the big kind of distribution things, but then won't follow through with the little tiny things, and I think it's sort of relative to, how popular a film, or, how much access a film has, relative to, how far it gets, or the kind of streaming or the distribution it gets. So, a little filmmaker like me, we didn't get the big distributors, but so we were kind of forced to break all the distribution down. And so try to make the most out of every film festival, out of every educational screening. We went for airline distribution until the broadcast came, and then we made a release onto education platforms, streaming, but also selling DVDs to educational libraries. So that's a big chunk of what documentaries do and how they make their money.
Wow. I mean, this is getting really juicy. So one of the reasons I want to kind of unpack that, because I really want to target this episode for people who are doing something on their own. It doesn't matter whether they're doing a short video, some webisode on YouTube, where they're doing a half an hour or 60-minute or 80-minute documentary on their own, and no matter the budget. It's so fascinating, because we went from being the minority to what I think the majority now. One of the reasons for me to want to devote my time shooting a documentary, regardless of its success and financial gains, is that I find documentaries to be so fascinating. I think that's the way to go. I think that's what people are seeking out these days, because they're real and they're true.
Plus, I mean, it offers a whole different point of view. It's outside of the mainstream media. And the big thing in Hollywood and media is who gets to tell the story. Now is the time where we get to tell our own story in our own authentic way. Technology has given us the opportunity to reach wide audiences, and to be able to communicate ideas and to share information. And I think, with this technology, we can do that. Before you had to buy whole encyclopedias and try to get updates for things, but now you can use this technology to communicate ideas directly to people in a really quick way, stylized way. So it sort of raised the bar in technique and storytelling. It's a privilege to do this work, and also, we can change society and make it better, build, try to change minds and build understanding and have more compassion, with this information. So I mean, it's all relative, and it depends on the choice of the filmmaker and what kind of story they want to tell, what they're trying to achieve with this media. So, in a perfect world, everyone would try to be doing good stuff and helping to build a better society.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of respect for that. I think podcasters trying to do the same things, bloggers have been doing it even longer. I think documentary producers, editors, directors like yourself, you have a lot of titles, are doing it in an even more sophisticated and more, I think in many ways, more committed, just because the level of complexity, the length of the project. Hi there, it's me again. I want to thank you very much for listening to this episode, and I hope you were able to learn a few things. If you enjoyed what you heard, it would be hugely helpful if you could subscribe to the Feisworld podcast. It literally takes seconds. If you're on your mobile phone, just search for Feisworld podcast in the podcast app on iPhone or an Android app such as Podcast Addict and click subscribe. All new episodes will be delivered to you automatically. Thanks so much for your support.